guess she's a goner now. Standing in front of the shed was Lester, though with confusion. I approached him. Did he come to help? If so, were the other two gone? Holding on to these thoughts, I called out to Lester. "What are you doing?" "Huh, Rachel," upon hearing my voice. Lester turned around with a shocked expression. I tilted my head in confusion. "Why are you here?" "Rick and Julia said they'd cover for me." "Julia? No way, right? It's gotten into you all of a sudden." "No, this can't be." Lester screamed and dashed towards the shed, desperately trying to open its door. "Hey, what are you doing?" "Julia is inside." Just then, a dreadful thought crossed my mind. Did he mistake Julia for me and lock her in the shed? "Where's the key?" I threw it in the ocean. And oh, just as I was beginning to despair, someone said, "She's not in there. I'm Rachel White. I'm a 53-year-old part-time worker and a wife. I have 2 kids, but they've grown up and have families of their own now. So it's just me and my husband, Lester, living together. To be honest, Lester has been somewhat domineering lately, and we've not been getting along. He never wanted to be involved in raising the kids and always left everything to me. As a result, the kids never warmed up to Lester, and although they care about me, they don't visit our house. The reason they don't come around is probably because they're ashamed of having a mother like you. Lester always blamed me for everything. But I'm not the type to just sit there and be belittled either. So we often get into arguments lately. The only one who'd listen to my rants is, "You've been saying a lot." "What's up, Rachel?" "It's Rick Taylor, a coworker at the supermarket. Rick is a distant relative of mine. We live nearby and have known each other since he was a kid. We happened to reunite at the supermarket and began sharing stories. Rick has an older girlfriend. They plan to marry once he graduates from college. Seeing Rick happy feels like seeing my own children, who have drifted apart, and it lightens my mood a bit. As for Lester, he seems to be infatuated with a young lady from his workplace lately. She's really thoughtful and above all, so adorable. She always relies on me and asks me questions. You're her boss at work?" Lester, with his sappy and pitiful face, gets a word of advice. Then his face turned cold in an instant. Compared to her, you're not cute at all. What are you on about? You always have something to say about me, and ever since you had our child, you've been putting on weight. Lester began to mumble complaints about my body. Indeed, when I first met Lester, I had the time and energy to take care of myself to maintain a good figure. But after our children were born, I was busy taking care of them alone and didn't have that luxury. I always put myself second. Especially after the kids moved out, you just ballooned. True, after the kids left, I used the time I previously spent on childcare to have some tea. During that time, I'd also have some snacks, so I was well aware I was putting on weight. Really, you're not attractive at all. I can't even see you as a woman anymore. That's a bit harsh. You're not one to talk about appearances. While Lester criticizes my appearance, his belly sticks out more than mine, and he's even starting to lose hair. Before he talks about me, he should work on his own stomach. Shut up, it's fine for men. What kind of logic is that? That's exactly why you're not cute. With that, Lester stormed out of the room. I sighed at Lester's behavior. Once again, his bad habits show. He's truly like a child sometimes. Good morning. Lester ignored my greeting and headed straight to work. When he's upset, he tends to ignore me for a while. Though he's so exhausting. Rachel, what's up? Did you have another fight with Lester? Rick, as always, approached me with a refreshing smile. I told him what Lester had said to me. Hearing my story, an idea seemed to spark in Rick's eyes. How about going to the gym? The gym? Yes, I've recently been hitting the gym with my girlfriend. If you use your spare time for the gym, you'll lose weight and you can show Lester. I thought about Rick's proposal for a moment and then nodded in agreement. So we decided to go to the gym on our next day off. From then on, I started going to the gym regularly. At first, I was unsure, but it turned out to be a great fit for me. I really enjoyed the sport, and the feeling after a good workout was addictive. Hey, Rachel. Oh, Rick, and this is the girlfriend I've always talked about. Pleasure to meet you. I've heard a lot from Rick. I'm Julia Smith. I began to run into Rick at the gym from time to time. Girlfriend Julia is a charming young lady with big eyes. Just over time, after meeting a few times, I became quite close with her. Can I vent to you for a bit? Of course, honey. That's when Julia started talking about her boss at work. Apparently, she has a boss who's really pushy. He constantly approaches her more than necessary and always tries to invite her out for meals or drinks. Oh, but actually, One of my relatives is on the board of the company. They said they'll handle it soon. Well, that's good to hear. But really, there are annoying folks everywhere. In my case, it's at home. Hey! What? I just got home, and there was Lester looking sour as always. I sighed at his attitude and responded, "Where are you going every single day?" "To the gym." "I told you before." "I didn't hear that." "You didn't listen." "It's not that you didn't hear. You just chose to ignore me." I replied to Lester while preparing dinner. If he's just lazing around at home all day, it would be nice if he helped out a bit. You're going there with the money I earn, and you're getting cocky just because you lost a little weight. I pay for the gym from my part-time job, so it's not with the money you earn. I clearly told you, even if you ignored me. Maybe you need a hearing aid. I couldn't help but snap back, but Lester, having no comeback, silently left the room. For the record, I did tell him, even if he ignores me, I always make sure to communicate, especially when money is involved. Well, he probably forgets right away anyway. This is so frustrating. The next week, I was getting ready to go to the gym again. Lester approached me. "Hey, clean up the storage shed." "What?" "We have a decent-sized storage shed on our property. It's true that it's packed with stuff, but everything inside is Lester's junk. Lester has a habit of buying tools for every new hobby he starts, then quickly loses interest and dumps them in the shed. Why should I clean it up? It's your stuff. I'm off to the gym." "Shut up, or you're my wife. Listen to me." Lester yelled at me, ready to storm off. At that point, I was at the end of my tether with him. "Rachel, is everything okay?" Seems like Lester's yelling got Rick's attention, who popped his head in. Behind him was Julia. I was supposed to go to the gym with the two of them today. They probably came to pick me up and heard the yelling. "Who the hell are you?" "To go to the gym, a gym buddy." "Julia?" "Mr. White." It seems Lester and Julia know each other. Well, Lester has a happy expression. Julia looks displeased and hides behind Rick. "Have some tea for now. If you stay there, you'll be in the way, so please stay back." Pushing Lester aside, I ushered the two into the room. I felt sorry for them, but I decided to decline their offer to go to gym together this time. So that's the situation. "Hey, can I help you instead?" Then they offered to organize the storage room in my place. I felt bad about it, but honestly, you're a bit annoyed, aren't you? "Yeah, kinda. So let's sort it out at the gym. And it might be better with some manpower, right? How about this? We'll take something we like from the storage, and you treat us to the next meal," they said with a mischievous grin. I nodded in agreement and headed to the gym, feeling grateful. Lester seems to be gone. I tried calling out to Lester as I searched the house, but he was nowhere to be found. If he's not here, I'm going. Anything inside is basically junk, so if you don't want it, toss it. After saying that to the two, I headed to the gym. 2 hours later, feeling guilty for coming home so late, I bought some ice cream and returned. "I'm back. Thanks for." Seen of the two inside. I thought they might still be in the storage room and went to check, but they weren't there either. Instead, there was Lester. They're beyond help now, standing in front of the storage. I approached Lester with a puzzled look. Did he come to help? If so, did the other two leave? Tweet these questions in mind. I called out to Lester. "What are you doing?" "Huh, Rachel?" As I called out, Lester turned around in disbelief. I tilted my head, confused. "Why are you here?" "I went to the gym. Rick and Julia said they'd help." "Julia? You're kidding, right? That's gotten into you all of a sudden?" "No way. It can't be." Lester screamed and ran to the storage shed. And then he tried frantically to open the storage door. Julia's inside. A terrible thought crossed my mind. Did he mistake Julia for me and lock her in the storage? Under the scorching sun, I threw the key into the ocean. No way. I was on the brink of despair at Lester's words. "She's not in there. Someone informed us." It was Rick who was there. He was coldly glaring at Lester. "Rick, where's Julia?" "I've got Julia out." According to Rick, after moving some larger items outside, he apparently stepped out to buy a drink while he was away. Julia, who was inside checking smaller items, got trapped. When Rick returned, he got a call on his cell, broke the storage shed window, and rescued Julia. I took Julia to the hospital, just to be safe. She'll be staying overnight. I came back to explain things to Rachel. How could this happen? The window of the storage shed isn't easily seen from the door, so it must have been overlooked. But the fact that Rick could break the window and rescue Julia was because of his workout at the gym. So in the dark, you mistakenly locked Julia in, thinking it was Rachel. Yes, that's right. I meant to trap Rachel, not target Julia. That's not the point. Rick shouted at Lester, and Lester was frozen in shock. It's a good thing I was there this time. If it was only Rachel, it could have been very dangerous. And of course, I'm not saying it was okay because it was Julia. Lester, being glared at by Rick, looked utterly diminished, fully looking down at him. Rick turned to me. Can you come to the hospital? Yes, of course. I nodded and hurried to the hospital. Can I? You better not. Maybe you should prepare some divorce papers. Rick cut off Lester's attempt to follow and shot him another icy glare. Clicked mate now. I'm desperately holding back from laying my hands on you. Lester gasped. But more importantly, I need to get Rachel to Julia. I won't hide that. Overwhelmed by Rick's intense gaze, Lester sat down on the ground. Ignoring Lester, Rick urged me to move, and I also ignored Lester. Then, guided by Rick, I entered Julia's hospital room. Julia, Rachel, I'm sorry for making you worry. Don't apologize. I'm so sorry to have let you go through all this. Julia seemed better than I had imagined. However, seeing the IV in her arm, it's clear she wasn't just trapped for a few minutes. Julia's parents apparently live far away, and it seems to take some time for them to arrive. Rachel, there's something I need to talk to you about regarding your husband. Hearing the truth she shared, I felt a headache coming on. It turns out that the boss at work, who was being overly persistent with her, was Lester. I knew he shared the same last name, but I assumed it was just a coincidence since it isn't a rare one. However, when they visited, I found out that my husband and the boss were the same person. She said that when she was alone in the shed and debating whether to tell me about it, someone had pushed her from behind and locked her. I quickly switched on my camera and managed to get a shot through her gap. She showed me a video on her phone that captured Lester holding a key and running away. Moreover, sorry Rachel if you were to unfortunately pass away in an accident. I could be with Julia, so you'll have to stay in that hot shed for a while. The video also showed Lester saying this, so he tried to lock me in the shed to make Julia his own. I swear Mr. White and I are definitely not involved in that way. Thus, I trust you. It's Lester I can't believe. What was that man thinking? Just then, Julia. Lester, why are you here? Ex-Lester barged in. Julia let out a small scream, and Rick shielded her with his body. What are you doing here? I came to apologize to Julia. You don't have the right to. Is it true that you've tried to force Julia into an affair with you? Stop joking around. Rick glared at Lester. Being a regular at the gym, Rick was quite buff, and being tall, his glare was pretty intimidating. You're cheating with Rachel, aren't you? Excuse me? I know she works at the same supermarket as you, and you guys are close. Well, she's family. Upon hearing this, Lester looked stunned. I didn't know that. You should have known about Rick. Remember? He used to visit and play with the kids when they were young. It seemed like Lester didn't recall. Probably because he dumped all the childcare on me and barely played with the kids. Indeed, Rachel and I are close, but as family. We've known each other since we were kids. She's been there for me for advice. At the very least, I don't have ulterior motives like you. Stay away from her. Leave now. Both, I don't want to see her face. I don't plan on forgiving you, so your apology isn't necessary. Please leave. Lester was coldly turned away and left, looking defeated. I regretted marrying him and just kept on apologizing to Julia. After that, Lester and I decided to get a divorce. I don't want a divorce. I love you too. At first, Lester refused to sign the divorce papers saying this. I considered getting a lawyer involved, but he signed the papers trembling when he was stared down by Rick. It was a good call having Rick there with me. I packed up my things and went to my parents' house. I'll be away for a bit, but thanks for everything. Take care of your health. Thank you too, truly. May I come over to visit? Oh, absolutely. We made sure to meet up soon again. I'd been upfront with my folks back home about everything that happened, so they understood. If anything, they even said, you really did your best. I later heard from Rick, with whom I'd exchanged contact details about what happened after. Apparently, after I completely distanced myself, they took the evidence to the police. This led to Lester getting arrested. Moreover, when the police arrived, he resisted vehemently and added more charges to his list. He won't be out for a while, and even if he does, he won't ever get near Julia again, Rick said with a chuckle. Instinctively, he must have been quite upset. Seeing his face reminded me that Rick had always been gentle and kind, but once he got mad, there was no stopping him. The kids were always able to calm down that side of Rick, which is why he often came over to our place. Ouchie now, with no kids to suit him and Julia, having been terrorized by Lester, if he ever shows his face again, it might be the end of him. I mused over this while having tea with my mom. I stayed with my family for a while after that and decided to rent a place closer to work. During that time, I received letters from Lester, but I threw them away without reading it. They're probably pleas for help. Why would I help someone who tried to take my life? I murmured, cutting off all possible contact with Lester. If things had gone a little differently, I might have been in a situation where I couldn't cry for help, dying in this sweltering heat. This story serves as a reminder not to expect help from anyone in the future. Now that I don't have that troublesome roommate, maybe I should get a pet. When I discussed this with Julia, dogs are the best. I absolutely adore them. Apparently, she loves dogs, but can't have one because of her living situation. Soon, with her encouragement, I'll be adopting an easy-to-care-for dog. Both Rick and Julia will be utterly smitten, and before I know it, they'll be the ones eagerly taking it for walks. Julia was eventually discharged from the hospital. Fortunately, thanks to her timely rescue, she had no lingering issues. There shouldn't be any issues for the marriage either. Later on, my in-laws paid me a visit. They sincerely apologized, saying, "We're truly sorry for our son's actions." For the record, my in-laws are generally good people, calm and kind. I often wondered how they had a son like Lester. It seems that Lester's grandmother had always spoiled him. Nevertheless, they acknowledged their part and decided not to welcome Lester after his release. "That man's a disgrace to our family," they said, relocating far away to ensure he couldn't return. The kids had been informed of all the details. The kids who already disliked Lester decided to cut all ties with him. Right in front of me, they all blocked his contact. It was the moment it became clear that Lester would be on his own from now on. After that, when I discussed the situation with my part-time jobs manager, I found out that I would soon be made a full-time employee. The kids even said they'd send me some money if needed, so it looks like I'll be able to live peacefully from now on. Later on, I heard through the grapevine that Lester got out of jail. However, with no one to turn to, he had racked up debt over the Julia incident. He was obviously fired from his job too. As for what happened to Lester afterward, no one seems to know. Well, it's none of my business now. Sometime after that incident, I was attending Rick and Julia's wedding. The bond between them had only strengthened after what happened. They managed to have a lovely ceremony, and it turns out Julia's expecting. Seeing the two of them looking so happy, rubbing her belly, I had to hold back tears. A congrats to you both. Wishing you all the happiness in the world. Thank you so much. When the baby arrives, I'd love for you to hold them. It was clear they were genuinely happy. Since then, I've kept up with my gym routine. Now, the kids are even showing interest. I'm even showing interest, and whenever our schedules align, we hit the gym together. It feels like we've never been closer. From here on out, it seems we'll all be living happier days together. Thank you for watching the video up all the way to the end. If you've resonated with the content, please leave a positive rating and a comment. Honestly, I prefer Mally over Carol. I wish she'd just leave the house already. Tom and Julia have been ignoring me for about 10 years. I had a feeling, and it seemed Tom was having an affair. That morning, I couldn't shake off their conversation, feeling frustrated while working. But whether he's seeing someone or not, this is the only home I have to return to. When I finished work and tried to unlock the door, my key wouldn't fit. No matter how many times I tried, it wouldn't insert. When I rang the doorbell, there was no sign of anyone coming. Had they locked me out, deeming me unnecessary in the house? The moment I realized that my anger hit its peak, I'll make them pay. Both Tom and Julia, and that other woman determined. I left the house. My name is Carol Brown. I'm 47 years old. I work in sales and lead a busy life. Since at 40, I had never really been in a serious relationship. Though I dated a few men, none worked out. I started to believe that I might never get married. Once that thought settled in, I dived deeper into my work year after year, resulting in me becoming a person who only worked, unable to find love or get married. The only consolation was the trust one earned at the company where I've been since my early career days. But then, one day, a turning point came. It was when I met Tom. He was the representative from a new client, 2 years my senior. I'm Tom Perker. Nice to meet you. My first impression was that he was a very refreshing gentleman. We worked together a few times, and he was so diligent and passionate about his job. I had never met such an impressive man before. Though I had given up on romance, I found myself becoming attracted to him. Much to my delight, it seemed he felt the same way. And what started as business drinks led to more personal outings, and soon we were dating. When Tom confessed his feelings, I want to date you with marriage in mind. He said, I never expected to have a boyfriend at this age. I said, all alone someone wanting to marry me. The date. I immediately accepted, and we began our relationship. But Tom had some secrets. Firstly, he had divorced just a few months earlier. And he had a 6-year-old daughter. Honestly, I was quite shocked. He didn't share why they divorced, but I assumed since he had custody, his ex-wife must have done something. Yet, hearing this didn't change how I felt about him. I was prepared to raise his daughter if he was fine with it. My feelings for him only grew stronger. His daughter's name, apparently, is Julia. After hearing from Tom, I made an effort to spend time with Julia, arranging opportunities to hang out at the park or go shopping together. And then, about a year after I started dating Tom, we got married. We didn't have a wedding ceremony. We just filed the marriage certificate. Still, it was good. I never realized how happy it could be to marry someone you love. However, various worries did cross my mind. I wondered if I'd get along with Tom and Julia, who had always been family. So would Julia, as she grew, accept me? Also, I couldn't quit my job after getting married. I was concerned if I'd have enough time with Julia. So on my days off, I tried my best to spend time bonding with my family. Perhaps because of that effort, Julia grew incredibly close to me, and our relationship became just like a real mother and daughter. However, this harmony didn't last forever. Things started to change when she entered her teens. Oh, no, in middle school, she began to lash out at me. It started with a comment from Julia. Carol, you seem older than the other moms, don't you think? Remember the other day, during parent-teacher conference day? I just thought, why did Dad ever fall for someone like Carol? Sure enough, there had been a parent-teacher conference recently. I couldn't attend because of work, but from what Julia said, many parents must have been there. Is that so? It's embarrassing to have Carol as my mom. Saying that, Julia went back to her room. Whether she meant harm or not, it stung. Perhaps it's embarrassing, huh? Almost in tears, mumbled, it might just be a rebellious phase. Deacon hoped it would pass. However, there was no sign of her comments letting up. Carol, did your cooking get worse? It's not tasty. Oh, really? If you don't like it, you can leave it. Okay, I'm done then. She left the table without cleaning up. Tom was also there, but he didn't say anything. Oh, Julia's always like this now. He seemed uninterested, quietly continuing his meal. Well, he must be tired too. Without saying anything further, I cleaned up the dishes Julia left behind. A couple of months later, not only were Julia's comments unchanged, but I also started to hear unbelievable remarks from Tom. While I was cleaning the bathroom, I overheard Tom and Julia talking in the living room. Looking at the young woman at work, it's a downer. I wonder why I'm living with an old woman like Carol. That's hilarious. Hearing that was a shock. I had never imagined Tom would have negative feelings about me. He had cherished me when we were dating. When did that change? Was he influenced by Julia? Lost in thought, I unknowingly stopped scrubbing the tub. I thought he was on my side, but I felt betrayed. In this house, it feels like no one cares about me. With that thought, I was completely overwhelmed by despair. How much longer with the bath? Oh, sorry. Urged by Julia, I started scrubbing again, but my hands were shaking. I gave up cleaning and began to fill the tub. From that day, Tom's attitude toward me changed drastically. Julia, I figured he couldn't contain his feelings anymore. Carol, how about losing some weight? It's not a good look for you. Not a good look. Dad's right. I told you before. It's embarrassing having Carol as a mom. How can you? What do they have to say such things to me? I've poured out all my time and love into this family. I realized none of my feelings got through to them, and it felt suffocating. You don't have to say that. What does it bother you? She was laughing hysterically, and Tom didn't stop her. He joined in on the laughter. It became too painful to stay there, so I escaped to the kitchen. Carol, get dinner ready now. If it's as bad as usual, you won't hear the end of it. Despite my exhaustion from work, I started preparing dinner. Either Tom or Julia offered any help. They sure had a lot to say, though. While I was doing chores even on weekends, the two of them watched TV and filled the room with their laughter. If you're just watching TV, can you wash the dishes? Why? Why should we? You can do it. We're busy watching TV. As always, neither of them listened to my request, but I said we're busy. Not bothering us. Calm glared at me and yelled. Guess it's pointless to ask for help anymore. I grised defeated. I started tackling the mountain of laundry in front of me. How long will they keep putting me down? Isn't marriage supposed to be more joyful than this? And to think I finally found happiness in my 40s. But their torment didn't stop there. My life took a turn for the worse one day. That day was our wedding anniversary. I've always cherished our anniversaries, so that day I prepared an extravagant meal. Grilled turkey appetizers and a cake for dessert. It was like a Christmas or New Year's feast. I didn't cook everything, but seeing the food spread out, Tom and Julia were ecstatic. Maybe I felt this moment was heartwarming because I still had affection for them. This is delicious. Tastes great. Oh, here, this piece of meat is for you. Oh, thanks. Touching them. I couldn't help but smile, but that joy was short-lived. For some reason, from the next day, they began to ignore me. They ignored every question I asked, every comment I made. Wait, watching the two of them chat and laugh without me broke my heart. But I held on to the hope that they'd eventually talk to me like before. However, that hope was crushed. The ignoring started when Julia was 15. Before I knew it, she turned 25. They still continued to ignore me. When they wanted something, they'd just bluntly shout. If I looked their way, they'd be leisurely sipping beers and coolers, having a good time. Experienced. I'd protest. You can't just talk to me like that. I'm tired too, you know. Gong. I used to say such things, but after 10 years, I didn't even feel like saying them anymore. All I did was listen to what the two of them said and acted accordingly. I felt just like a robot. Of course. I thought about divorce many times, but I couldn't take that step. I wanted someone to push me, but there was no one. I spent my days in turmoil all by myself. You know what? That's hilarious. The two of them are still making noise in the living room as usual. At first, it was annoying, but after being ignored for 10 years, I just didn't care anymore. Is this my life forever? That's when something happened that really shook me. It was when I was going back to the living room from my room. Hey, Dad, what's going on with Maylee these days? Molly, well, why are you blushing? Who's Maylee? Shocking. Honestly, I prefer Mally over Carol. I wish she'd just leave already. So that's it. It confirmed my suspicions. Tom was cheating. I had a feeling for a while. He suddenly started caring about his appearance, using cologne and hair gel. When I found cosmetics in his suit pocket, I felt devastated. I knew about it, but hearing about the other woman from Tom made it hurt so much. That day, their conversation haunted me. I didn't feel like going home, so I stayed late at work. Even though I knew he was cheating, I had nowhere else to go. When I got home and searched my bag for the key, I wondered how late I'd be up doing chores. It seemed like it would be past midnight. I tried to insert the key I found into the lock, but it didn't fit. Oh no, did they change the locks while I was at work? I kept ringing the doorbell, but nobody came out. The lights were on, so I knew someone was home. Neither Tom nor Julia responded to my calls. Was it not enough for them to just ignore me? Now they've physically locked me out. I began to understand, and instead of sadness, anger welled up inside. After all I've done, why do they treat me like this? If they want me to leave, I'll gladly do so. Giving up on getting inside, I returned to my car and turned off my personal cell phone. Fortunately, I had all the tools I needed for work. I also had a work phone, so I wasn't worried. They'll regret this. Did that? I drove off. Breaked a week later. I was living in an nearby hotel. I ate at convenience stores and restaurants and only went back to the hotel to sleep. I never thought I could live such a comfortable life. Moreover, I was able to focus on my work more and felt that my performance improved. This must be because I left the house. Maybe it's time to go and check on things. With that thought, I turned on my personal cell phone. To my surprise, there were more missed calls and emails than I had ever seen. And most of them read, "Come home now or help clean up." Oh, mine. Upon arrival. I rang the doorbell. Unlike before, Tom and Julia quickly came out. Hey, why haven't you come back until now? Hurry up and help clean? Yeah. That come in quickly. The two grabbed my hands and pulled me inside. What greeted me inside was a mess. Takeout containers scattered everywhere, empty beer cans and trash bags. I knew it wasn't clean, but I never imagined it would be this bad. What's this? Julia didn't clean up. That's why it's so messy. I've been working too, you know. You could have helped. They used to get along so well, but their relationship seemed to have soured in just a week. Well, it's none of my business. I've lost my affection for them both. However, you clean it up. Wait. You came back to help clean, didn't you? That's not at all. I just came to get some of my things. Carol, are you mad? Changing the locks without telling us. Come on, come back to us. They both pleaded desperately, but there was no need for me to listen anymore. Silently, I packed all of my belongings into my bag. Grace just a pal for me. Don't ignore us. Wait, we're asking you, begging you. It's cruel to ignore us. For cruel to ignore? Who's been ignoring me all this time? At my words, both looked away uncomfortably, to make sure it's clean by the next time I come, and left the house. I had discreetly left the filled-out divorce papers in the bedroom. I wonder if they'll notice. After that, I stopped living in hotels and settled in a cheap monthly rental apartment. Though it was mostly just a place to sleep. Having my own space made me happy, and I looked forward to coming home every day. After I took my stuff, the two stopped contacting me. If they had noticed the papers, they would have surely reacted. I wasn't in the mood to reach out, and 3 months passed by. Then, I got a call from Tom after a long time. Hey, Carol, what the hell's true? What's the matter? What do you mean? What? Some lawyer just showed up telling us to vacate the house because you're selling the land. Oh, I see. While waiting for Tom's reaction, I consulted with a real estate agent about demolishing the house I used to live in. The reason is simple. I won't live there anymore. First off, the house is in my name. You think you can just sell it? That house is in my name, remember? We changed it when I got promoted. Did he forget something that important? I'm speechless. I'm speechless? Oh, right. And those divorce papers. What's the deal? I'm not divorcing you. I threw them away. Got it. Now stop selling the house and come back. Tibbs, Tom. Then hung up abruptly. Wish my see. The divorce papers got thrown away, huh? If only you'd filled them out, we could have divorced quietly. After hearing Tom's side of the story, I took further action. I'll definitely squeeze alimony out of Tom. I've endured for over 10 years. I'm determined to make him pay. With that resolve, I made a call to a certain place. Chenslit, you think changing the locks behind my back is a joke. I'd expect you to treat my selling the house as a joke too. Ever since the decision to sell the house, Tom and Julia fought even more. Checking my personal cell, there's almost always a message from Julia. The contents are just, I don't want to live with Dad anymore. She also mentioned their fights and Tom not cleaning up. But I never responded to those messages. I'm not attached to them. Frankly, I couldn't care less about what happens to Julia. 2 months later, I was at a law firm. Next to me sat a lawyer. These across from me were Tom and Julia. So, do you know why you're here? Oh, why we're here? He seemed pretty intimidated by the formal office atmosphere. Julia was sitting in her chair, looking like she didn't have anything to do with it. What's the deal? Thanks calling us here. It's because of you. Thorough that we've been busy moving and cleaning. I just wanted a break. Seeing her audacity, I realized they had no clue how badly they messed up. Thinking that, I was stunned and couldn't say anything. The house got demolished quickly and the land's been cleared. Everything's going according to my plan. However, there's still one unresolved issue. Today we have to settle it. What do you want? Hearing Tom's hesitant question, the lawyer calmly stated our business. We called you here today to discuss the divorce. Divorce? Yes. I already told you I wanted a divorce. I had no idea. Didn't you throw away the divorce papers I left behind? When I filled them out, it meant I wanted a divorce. But if you wanted a divorce, why not talk it out without getting a lawyer involved? If I just wanted a divorce, I would have done that. Yes, I had another motive besides divorce. To achieve that, I needed a lawyer. Tom, you're having an affair, right? Is with a girl named Mally? A coworker? The moment I mentioned his mistress, both Tom and Julia's eyes widened in shock. No way. That's right. Oh, really? Then can you still say that after seeing this? I pulled out several photos and documents from an envelope and placed them in front of him. What's this? I hired a private investigator to look into you. Impressive, right? Pictures of you entering a hotel, getting cozy, and even going into her apartment. But you're mistaken. It's taken? Going into a hotel together is enough evidence of an affair. Julia, you knew about it, right? You two seemed pretty chummy, talking about Mally. Funny you, seeing her flustered, I slammed more photos onto the table. Just with this, there's no way out. I'm going to ask Tom for a divorce and alimony. After being presented with all this evidence, there's no escaping it, right? Or do you have something else you want to say? I was so irritated by their attitudes that I made a slightly provocative comment. However, neither of them lashed out at me. This is all Dad's fault? Why did it come to this? I don't even understand the whole alimony thing. You were cheering for me and Mally too, weren't you? What the heck are you saying now? Thirdly, the childish squabbling of the two right before my eyes left me speechless. Later on, the attorney moved the conversation along, and Tom and I were finally divorced. I was satisfied since I was able to demand the alimony amount I had hoped for from Tom. Moreover, since we had identified both Mally's residence and workplace, I requested alimony from her at the same time. At first, Mally seemed quite resistant, but in the end, she apparently agreed to pay without much fuss. It seems that Tom and Mally ended up breaking up after all this, and Tom and Julia constantly quarreled, so they're now living separately. The reason I know all this is because Julia constantly updates me. I can't live on my own. Please, let's live together. And I'm truly sorry, unlike Dad. So please, also like that. She kept insisting that she was repentant, but how could I believe her? I ignored all her messages. Eventually, it seems she gave up as she stopped reaching out entirely. As for me, I moved out of my monthly rental apartment and purchased a unit in a brand new building. It's a beautiful room with all my favorite furnishings. It's like a dream space. Tonight, I dove into my soft bed, preparing to sleep. Being able to have time just for myself. How blissful is that? I decided I'd make up for lost time and enjoy my single life to the fullest. Thank you for watching the video all the way to the end. If you resonated with the content, please leave a positive rating and a comment. I can do just fine without someone like you, you know. My elite husband looks down on me for working part-time. He has the audacity to tell me from a high horse that I should be more grateful to him. Well then, please handle everything by yourself for a while. After I left for a month, the result was unthinkable. I am Carol Williams, 35 years old. My husband, Davis, is 3 years older. We met at a singles party. Davis, always known for being smart, graduated from very prestigious high schools and universities that everyone knows. And now he works for a top-tier company. He may be a bit prideful, but he has always been confident and a reliable figure with leadership qualities. He's always pulled indecisive me along, and I was drawn to that side of him. We wanted children, but we let nature take its course, enjoying our life as a couple for some time. Then, after 3 years, I discovered I was pregnant. Her son, Mark, is about to turn 7. He's an innocent, active boy, causing us many heart-stopping moments, but he's also kind-hearted and always brings smiles to those around. He's my pride and joy. Since before our marriage, he enjoyed gambling as a hobby. However, it wasn't like he was addicted. He enjoyed horse racing and boat racing within a set limit during weekends. Before we got married, I told Davis I was a bit worried about his gambling. He promised never to exceed his limit and that it wouldn't affect our family. I had some reservations, but since he wasn't too deep into it and wasn't seriously gambling, I trusted him, and we got married. In reality, after our marriage and Mark's birth, our days were mundane, and gambling became a way for Davis to relieve stress. But around when Mark turned 2, Davis hit the jackpot in one of the races. The amount was substantial, and Davis was ecstatic. Of course, I was thrilled too and celebrated with him. It's in high spirits. Davis bought tons of toys for Mark and told me he'd buy me anything I wanted. He bought me shoes and clothes I hadn't gotten for a while. I didn't think then that this big win would change him, but from that day on, Davis's personality shifted dramatically. Initially, he'd buy Mark and me whatever we wanted and even paid off our 10-year remaining home mortgage. He said he'd save the rest, but he spent it all on gambling. He began to aim for quick riches, betting far larger amounts than before. Lately, he's always preoccupied with gambling, spending less time with the family. He used to take Mark to the park on days off, playing soccer or catch, and building model kits together. Now, he spends weekends watching horse races and boat races, and even at home, he spends time gathering information from newspapers and the internet. I can't tell if he's winning or losing, but there are days when he's clearly in a foul mood, probably from losing at gambling. And on those days, he'd blame me for not cooking proper meals or being too slow in my actions, claiming that's why he can't make sound judgments. Next one day, I shifted some of his analysis notes and newspaper clippings scattered on his desk. He exploded and said, "Don't touch my important stuff without permission. You're so thoughtless, the worst wife ever." It seems he can't forget the thrill of that one big win. Who knew money could change a person this much? His eyes always looked bloodshot, and he was constantly on edge. Seeing him change day by day was heart-wrenching. Davis's temper got worse over time, and he started verbally abusing me more. Who do you think is maintaining this lifestyle? Show some gratitude? Such condescending remarks, looking down on me for not earning as much. After we had our child at his wish, I left the full-time job I had been working at. I started working part-time. The hours are short and it doesn't pay much, but it covers the cost of growing. The cost of groceries and household items. More importantly, since Davis got hooked on gambling, the money he'd been giving for living expenses had gradually decreased, so without my income, we wouldn't make ends meet. Then one day, as I was tidying up the house after returning from my part-time job, I noticed something odd. The cherished purse Davis had gifted me for my birthday when we were dating was missing. I'd had a bad feeling about it, so when he got back from work, I eventually confronted him. Without showing any regret, he simply admitted he had sold it. My suspicion was confirmed. Turns out he lost all his money gambling that month and needed funds for an upcoming big race. So he decided to sell my bag without asking. I couldn't believe he would sell someone else's stuff for a bet. I argued, saying he should have at least told me, but he snapped back saying, "Why do I need permission? I bought it for you in the first place." From then on, whenever he was short on cash, he started selling my stuff and household items without my knowledge. One day, after years of this behavior, as summer vacation began for Mark, who was in elementary school, I received a call from my mother that my father had collapsed. Turns out, he had a heart attack and was rushed to the hospital. I was deeply worried and concerned, given that my mother is also getting on in years. I was worried about how she'd cope alone once my father was discharged. I shared my concerns with Davis. His response, "What's that got to do with me?" He said just that. Pixlor, instead of showing concern for my father or urging me to be with my parents, he was engrossed in the internet, making predictions for that day's races. Feeling it was pointless to talk further, I told him I wanted to go stay at my parents' for a while to help out and asked if he'd be okay on his own. Effing dismissively, "What do you take me for? I'm sure I won't miss having you around. In fact, it'll be a relief," he said. Probably he had a bad day at gambling yesterday. At first, I used to counter his behavior, but now I just become numb to it. I quickly packed our things and decided to stay at my parents' with Mark. Luckily, my father received prompt medical care, so it wasn't as serious as we'd feared, and he was discharged sooner than expected. Seeing my dad safe and sound, along with the doctor's explanation, my mom seemed relieved and reassured. For months, I took it upon myself to handle things around the house to give my parents a break. My mother was delighted to see Mark and was a great help, playing with him and assisting with his summer vacation homework. Mark grew fond of my mom, and it was nice to see her happy and smiling every day. Realizing my parents were managing well, I decided to return home after a month. As Mark and I walked into our home, a peculiar smell greeted us. The source was evident immediately. Clothes littered the floor and couch, and plastic bags were strewn everywhere. Of course, they were left unsorted. Dirty dishes piled up in the sink, and leftover food and cups and cons scattered about. It was the middle of summer, and without proper ventilation, the stench was overwhelming. I quickly opened the windows and began cleaning. I took Mark to the bedroom, and during that time, I quickly tied up the house. As I was cleaning, I noticed some items were missing. That the life-sized mirror that was supposed to be in the foyer was gone. That mirror was a wedding gift from my mom. It became clear that Davis had sold it. I was beyond furious and broke down, but there was no time to cry. I had to prepare dinner for Mark and myself. Switching gears, I cleaned the living room, kitchen, and entrance. Sorting out the trash, cleaning the dishes, and doing the laundry took me about 2 hours. While I was vacuuming, Davis returned home. Though I had so much to tell him, I simply asked about the mirror. Unashamedly, he replied with a smirk. It fetched a good price. I lost my cool and said, "The house was a stinking mess. I haven't touched your precious notebook. You better clean up the rest yourself." Don't get the wrong idea. I've just been swamped with work and haven't had time for anything at home. You're lucky I even keep you around in this house. Show some gratitude, will you? In that moment, I felt something shattering inside of me. I've reached my breaking point. I quietly muttered, maybe we should just get a divorce. I whispered it. Perhaps he hadn't expected that, as he stared at me with wide eyes. The house is mine. I wasn't even expecting any alimony, and I didn't care about our shared property. More than that, I told him if he lets me go, I don't need any money. He retorted, saying he'd be just fine without me and to do as I please, feeling like I couldn't stand another second in that space. I told Mark we were going back to my parents' house and packed our bags. That's on the train, watching Mark sleep. I couldn't help but wonder, how would he feel about divorcing and being separated from his father? He was just getting used to school and would have to leave his friends. Or above all, would he accept living with me back home? I had no lingering feelings for Davis, but the thought of putting a burden on Mark brought tears to my eyes. I couldn't let Mark see me crying. I wiped away the tears while stroking his head. I returned to my parents' house without any heads up, which left them quite shocked. No surprise there. I had just been there that morning. While my dad gave Mark a bath, I told my mom everything that had happened. She listened intently, occasionally wiping away tears, and assured me I had no reason to go back and that she'd always be on my side. Mark must have been exhausted as he went straight to bed after dinner. Chill for 2 hours later. I checked my phone to find a barrage of missed calls and texts. Skications and Mosquitity, I'll take custody of Mark. I won't let you have him. I don't want his money, but the thought of Davis taking Mark was absolutely unacceptable. Actors, I need to keep Mark. The next day, I tried to explain the situation to Mark as simply as possible, about not seeing Davis anymore, changing schools, being away from his friends, and the financial struggles ahead. Sick. He keeps talking about money. He even took the savings I've been collecting from my allowance. After saying that, he hugged me. I was furious that Davis had even taken the money our son had painstakingly saved. It's the worst parent ever, and I was angry at myself for not noticing. But Mark told me not to worry because he's on my side. Fixing my little boy trying to protect me. His words filled me with pride and relief, and I couldn't hold back the tears. I'm determined to do whatever it takes to make sure Mark has a happy life. I finally called Davis and told him I didn't want any alimony or property, but I would like child support. However, he stubbornly insisted that he'd raise Mark, claiming it'd be better for him. He unilaterally hung up the phone because he got angry at this exchange without giving in to each other, and the conversation did not progress. In the end, I texted him, stating I'd take the matter to court. After that, Davis kept blowing up my phone, but I ignored all his calls and found a lawyer near my parents' house. He probably didn't think I'd actually go through with it, as he kept sending arrogant texts saying things like, "Don't get ahead of yourself. You're gonna lose anyway." But he sold my belongings to fund his gambling habits, and there are records of him using abusive language towards the family. In an actual court case, he'd be at a clear disadvantage, and we'd probably end up discussing alimony and property division. Once my lawyer reached out and informed him of his unfavorable position, he suddenly became meek. It was puzzling where his initial confidence came from, but it seems he's finally faced reality. Later, my lawyer informed me that Davis had agreed to the divorce. I immediately filed for Mark's transfer to a new school, and asked to get Davis to fill out the divorce papers. I went back to his house alone. Of course, I didn't bother cleaning up. I just grabbed my belongings and headed straight back to my folks' place. Davis always claimed he could handle everything on his own, yet he continues to live in a home littered with trash. Now that there's no one to clean up after him, I reckon it's just gonna get messier and messier. It's pathetic that he can't even maintain a decent lifestyle. And that's not all. He's deep into gambling, so things are probably gonna get even tougher for him. After submitting the divorce papers, I took the matter to court, and just like that, my claims were easily accepted, allowing me to demand a hefty alimony from Davis. I'm not one to cling to money, but this will surely make him realize the gravity of his past actions. Right to my surprise, the alimony turned out to be a considerable amount. Unbeknownst to me, Davis was heavily indebted to pay alimony and child support and lost confidence in the company and was fired. Seems like his overblown pride has taken a hit. All I can hope for now is that he reflects on himself and ensures no one else suffers like I did. I decided to save the alimony I received from him for our son's future. That being said, since it's quite a sum, I want to repay my parents for all the trouble and make some happy memories with Mark, Schmark, and me. We're thinking of really letting our hair down, enjoying scrumptious meals, sightseeing, and just having a blast for a few days. Both Mark and my parents are eagerly looking forward to it. We've even started planning out the places to visit and restaurants to dine in. Although our son lost his dad, I want to ensure he looks back and feels he had a happy life. I'm committed to doing all I can to lead him to happiness. I was called by the nurse at the gynecologist's office, where I regularly go. Like, Lily, I really don't want to say this. She seemed hesitant, but then braced herself and told me, "You'd be better off divorcing your husband." I was shocked, but even more shocked by the reason the nurse gave. This became the start of a whirlwind story for my family. Lily Davis, pseudonym 26 years old, company employee, shared her experience. My name is Lily Davis, a 26-year-old employee. Married the married life. He's such a kind man, always caring about my parents too. My parents absolutely adored Hans and quickly gave their blessing for our marriage. Although we generally have a good relationship with family, there's one person I've always struggled with. My Anna. She's incredibly selfish. If she's happy, that's all that matters to her. Because of her, I've lost boyfriends in the past. Mom is always strict with Alma, but Dad, well, he spoiled her rotten. That only amplified her selfishness. I was adamant about not letting Alma take Hans away from me, so we announced our marriage when she wasn't around. I made sure Hans and Alma had little to no contact, but I could have never imagined what would happen next. One day, I suddenly felt unwell at work and fainted. I was rushed to the hospital, and after some tests, a revelation came to light. "Lily, are you okay?" Even though he was at work, Hans was deeply concerned and came rushing to the hospital. "Hans," I found out, "I'm pregnant," straight at my announcement. Hans embraced me warmly. "All right, you're finally gonna have a baby. This is great." Then Hans made a suggestion. "We should tell your parents about the pregnancy. I'll come with you." Of course, I agreed. Later, when I felt better, we went to tell my parents the big news. "Lily, congratulations. So we're gonna be grandparents, huh?" Mom was touched and Dad was deeply moved. Then my mom asked, "So, Lily, have you decided where you're going to have the baby?" I replied, "Honestly, actually, I haven't decided yet." Mom suggested, "Why not go to the maternity clinic where my friend works? I went there when I was pregnant with you." "Okay, I'll go there." I accepted her recommendation. I agreed with my mom's proposal. I thought our life was about to get even better from here on, but then I overheard it. I had no idea that someone was listening in on our conversation. At this time, I had not imagined it at all. The next day, I began visiting the maternity clinic that my mother had recommended. Everyone there was incredibly kind, and I was deeply grateful to my mom. But a few weeks later, something unexpected happened. Hans and I were at the hospital for a regular checkup when suddenly, "Lily Davis, can you come to the consultation room?" I was called in alone. Was you wondering why when I saw the nurse who came for me? I understood. "Lily, long time no see." It was Julia Smith, my mom's friend since middle school. "Julia, it's been a while." I greeted her with a smile. It seemed like Julia had come especially to congratulate me. "I just wanted to say congratulations on your pregnancy. Lately, I've been working night shifts lately, so I haven't had a chance to see you. Sorry about that." I responded with a smile. "No worries at all. Mom mentioned that she had you assist with her delivery, which is why I chose this clinic. Really, please send my regards to Rosa later." After a little chit-chat, Julia asked me a question. "By the way, is your husband with you today?" I was taken aback by the sudden question, but I answered properly, "Yes, he's always with me for checkups. I'm really grateful for that." Then, Julia's tone suddenly changed, and she whispered to me, "Lily, I hate to say this, but..." She hesitated, but then, gathering courage, she told me, "You should divorce your husband soon." I was filled with questions. I didn't understand what she meant, but what Julia said next left me in shock. "Actually, I saw Elma with your husband after my night shift. At first, I thought they were just dating, but I overheard Elma say, 'I wish Lily's baby would miscarry.' Don't you think so?" Hans, I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Hans was with Elma? And Elma wished for my child's miscarriage. Still, I wasn't convinced. Full of doubts. I returned to Hans. "How was it?" His question startled me. Oh, it's fine. No, it can't be. Hans, who always cared for me, wouldn't cheat with Alma, right? With these thoughts, we headed home. But if Julia's words were true, what should I do? Later, I went to my mom for advice. I told her everything Julia had said at the hospital. After some thought, my mom said, Dee, I understand your trust in Hans, thinking he wouldn't cheat with Alma. But I also don't think Julia would lie. Yeah, and I've had boyfriends stolen by Alma before. I tried to keep Hans away from her. It's the only way to know. If I kept doubting, it might affect our marriage. I wanted to trust Hans, so I asked my mom to hire the investigator. A few days later, the results came in. No, Willie. Everything turned white in my mind. The results were devastating. There was a lot of evidence of Alma and Hans having an affair. And there were voice recordings, too. I can't believe Alma was there during the pregnancy announcement. Yeah, she was. But I'm glad since Lily got pregnant. I didn't have to pay attention to her. Thanks for approaching me. I told you. But if Lily got pregnant, I couldn't hang out with Hans. I wish Lily's baby would miscarry. Well, Lily is so naive, trusting me like that. I can just tell her I'm busy with work or some other excuse. But who would have thought that Hans, whom Lily trusted, would love me? Poor Lily, really. Hey, you approached me first, remember. Elmo? I didn't want to hear any more and stopped the recording. I cried in front of my mom. True. Elma was there during the pregnancy announcement. My mom then said, actually, Hans came over a few times when you weren't around. Maybe that's when Alma approached him. I should have stomped it. I'm sorry. She apologized, but she was not the cause this time. I knew the real culprits were Hans and Alma. I felt I should punish them both. Mom, I'm frustrated. I want to give them what they deserve. Upon hearing this, my mom said, I understand. But remember, sing after Krienst and on your side. I tried to teach Elma right, but she never grew up. So, I'd have a plan. She then revealed a shocking truth and strategy. After hearing this, I realized that besides Hans and Lily, there was another person who deserved punishment. Next on the day of the plan, I headed to my parents' place with Hans. We had told Hans and Alma that we were throwing a baby celebration party. Wow, I didn't know Lily had a sister. I should greet her properly. Acting. Inside, I thought of him as a liar as we approached my parents' house. Soon, they would both get what they deserved. Free upon arriving, Hans turned pale. Alma seemed in a bad mood, and my mom looked stern. My father seemed panicked. I cut straight to the chase. Hans, we're getting a divorce. He looked confused and agitated. Hold on. What are you talking about? I replied calmly. Hans, of all people, you had an affair with my sister. However, he denied it. Hold on. I've never met Lily's sister. I presented all the evidence I had gathered from a private investigator in front of Hans. Come on, you're joking, right? He turned pale. Do you think I joke with evidence like this? And of course, I didn't stop there. I played all the conversations between Hans and Elma for him to hear. I can't believe you think it's okay if I had a miscarriage with our baby. That's not what it was. Alma who said that. Then, Elma entered the conversation with a sour look. If Lily had paid more attention to Hans, this wouldn't have happened. Instead of fussing over the baby, she should have looked after him too. Elma. My mother scolded her, but she didn't stop there. It's not fair. Lily gets to be married and happy. No man approaches me, and yet a good-looking guy like Hans goes to Lily. It's just not right. I was irritated, but I coldly said to Elma, maybe you'd be more popular if you weren't always switching men. It's your own fault. Shut up. She was angry at my words, but I wasn't scared at all and continued coldly. I'm divorcing Hans. Do whatever you want after that, but make sure you pay for the affair. Elma smirked at this. That's fine. Hans will pay the compensation. Don't worry. I brought Elma back to reality with the truth. Don't count on Hans for that. This we work at the same place, but I earn more. Plus, this affair will definitely get out, and Hans might lose his job. He'll be too busy with his own compensation. Suddenly, Emma, who had been so smug, looked panicked. No way. Hans, is it true you can't pay for both of us? Hans, looking guilty, apologized to Elma. Sorry, I don't have much savings. I'm in debt. She turned to our parents pleadingly. Please lend me some money. I don't mind, my father quietly said. But my mother, glaring at him, retorted, why are you always so soft on Elmo? Well, I feel sorry for her. My mother responded sharply. She's an adult. She has to take responsibility. But before my father could continue, my mother dared. Is it because you did something similar and you want to protect her? In your case, it was worse, having a child with the woman you had an affair with. Hold on, am I not your daughter? My mother took a moment to retrieve something from the living room, and when she returned, she showed it to Elma. It was an expert opinion as to whether the mother and Elma were parent and child. Elma was in shock reading the results. Is parental relation. Facing her astonishment, my mother laid out the truth. You were the result of an affair your father had years ago. The woman ran off as soon as the relationship was exposed. I wanted to divorce him, but I didn't think it was fair to you. I thought I could raise you well, even if you weren't my biological child. Bring this. I was stunned. It made sense why we looked so different and had opposing personalities. But at the same time, it was clear where her poor choice in men came from. Just goes to show, like father, like daughter. Then, my mother turned to Elma. I'm divorcing your father. You do whatever you want after that. Panicking, my father said, hold on. We've been together for so long. I stayed for the kids. There hasn't been love between us for years. Lily and Elma are adults now. Why should we stay together? And mother coldly concluded. Elma, desperate, clung to my father. Then, Dad, please do something about the compensation. But my father said to Elma, oh, Elma, I've given all I could for your college fees, so I don't have any more money. But I used that money to hang out, watching Elma and my father. I was just flabbergasted. Hearing that, Elma and Hans apologized to me. Lily, I'm so sorry. It was a momentary lapse in judgment. Please forgive me, Lily. I messed up too. Please forgive me. Facing their superficial apologies, I finally snapped. Enough is enough. This is all your fault. I can't forgive you both for making such hurtful comments about my child. My outburst made them both gasp in fear. Retaliation. I said, if Alma has learned anything from her mistakes, she better stay away from me from now on. Hans, get the divorce papers ready. If you make a fuss, we'll go to court. Both of them were crying, but I pretended not to notice. My mother also added, dear, I'm filing for divorce. If you have anything to say, let's talk through our lawyers. She then looked at me and said, Lily, I'm sorry for everything. I should have told you sooner. It's okay. Thanks to you. I also considered divorce. I need to thank Julia later. With that, my mother and I left the house. And so, my family was torn apart. Later on, I divorced Hans, and my mother divorced my father. He lost his job because his workplace found out about the whole incident. Elma, who squandered her college money on frivolous things, didn't have enough college credits and had to drop out. Elma and Hans got married, and my former father ended up living with them. However, just with my father's income, they couldn't make ends meet. Hans and Elma struggled to find stable jobs. When they did, they often ended up at shady companies and were worn out. Nowadays, the three of them constantly fight about who's to blame, nearly tearing their relationships apart. As for me, I don't care what happens to them. It's like comparing apples to oranges, you know. On the brighter side for me, Lily just gave birth safely. Really? The congratulations. Lily, thanks to my mother and Julia. I gave birth to a beautiful baby girl. Spoiling a child with too much love isn't right. I've decided to raise my daughter, using Elma and the others as cautionary tales. Thank you for watching the video all the way to the end. If you resonated with the content, please leave a positive rating and a comment. That leech is just wasting money. From now on, you're only getting $100 a month. For expenses, the smug look on my husband's face as he said this was infuriating. More than anything, I had had enough of this man who dared to call me a leech. My stubborn nature had kept me going until now, but I've reached my limit. If he wants to keep harping on it, I'll give him exactly the lifestyle he's asking for. Testimony Evan Smith, pseudonym 28, a full-time housewife. My name isn't Smith. I'm 28 years old. During college, I was fortunate to receive a job offer, and after graduation, I joined that company and worked my tail off. The company I worked for is a household name that just about everyone has heard of. Landing a job in my dream field, I felt even more motivated and rewarded. After I got the job, my college friends threw me a congratulatory party which turned into a mixer. Mixers weren't really my scene, so I didn't expect much from it. Seeing me about to be consumed by work, my friends tried to set me up with someone. That's when I met Rick. At that time, I just thought he was quite charming. As I mentioned, I met Rick through a friend's introduction. After my friend left, claiming to have some errands, Rick and I hit it off. The Rick I met that day was interesting and very considerate. I had no reservations about him, only good impressions. We exchanged contact info and went on a few dates. Every date was enjoyable, and I felt like I wanted to be with Rick forever. As we spent more time together, our relationship deepened, and we started dating officially. Due to our conflicting schedules, he proposed to me quite early. Because according to Rick, I don't want us to drift apart because of our jobs. I'd rather just get married. I was moved by his feelings, but I wanted to take things slow and get to know each other better before tying the knot. After all, marriage isn't something to rush into, or so I thought. But in the end, he persuaded me, and we got hitched. Once we decided on this, Rick acted swiftly. First, we registered our marriage. Then he immediately started pressuring me to quit my job. I had always dreamed of my current job, and even after getting married, I wanted to continue working. I'd I'd worked hard in college to land this job, and I had given my all during the job hunting phase. So when he simply told me to quit, I felt that was unfair. I tried to express my feelings to Rick, hoping he'd reconsider. But no matter how much I said I didn't want to quit, Rick would just firmly say, I, as the man, will work hard, so please support me by taking care of the house. Even when I told him that we could both work and save money and share household responsibilities, he wouldn't listen. I momentarily lost my temper with Rick, who was stuck in his old-fashioned ways, but I kept trying to get my point across. Despite him acting like it didn't matter one bit and not nodding in agreement, I was honestly flabbergasted. I don't want to just give up on an environment where I finally joined my dream company. Work is going well, and I'm blessed with supportive bosses and coworkers. That's why I, who wants to continue this job, tried every trick in the book, switching tactics and methods to persuade him over and over. Unfortunately, no matter how many times we talked about the same thing, he never gave up. Soon after, I had a meeting with my employer, and a decision was made. I gave up on continuing my job and decided to support Rick full-time. Determined to fully support him, I psyched myself up. But the reality was different from what I had imagined. My days became monotonous. Every morning, I'd wake up before Rick and prepare breakfast as he liked. Bitch during the day, while he was at work, I'd finish most of the household chores and prepare his favorite dinner by the time he came home. There were also social obligations with neighbors and community gatherings, which were my responsibilities. Whether it was grocery shopping, cleaning, or buying household goods, it was all up to me. For all these tasks, Rick would hand me the monthly expenses, and I'd have to manage within that. It became tough even to buy convenience items without second-guessing. I thought that once I became a homemaker. However, managing on just the portion given to him. To be honest, it's tough to even take care of him. With prices of various things rising lately, we were already having a tough time making ends meet, and this added even more strain on the household budget. To try and curb these expenses, I've sought out old-fashioned thrifty ways of living and even got some tips from the neighbors. I've been doing my best. I tell Rick it's for dieting purposes, and either skip my lunch or just have a light meal. But as time went by, of course, I loved him, but Rick seemed to act as if everything I did was just expected. He never complained about what I did, but he never praised me either. Even a simple thank you every now and then would have been enough. Having that would motivate me to keep pushing forward. That's why I always make sure to express my gratitude, yet nothing comes from Rick, neither in words nor actions. I always believed that marriage was about supporting each other. I started to think that maybe getting married after only 6 months of dating was a bit rushed. Then, after about 3 months of this we need to talk's environment, he finally started complaining. He accused me, who'd been trying so hard to budget, of wasting money. Needless to say, I wasn't spending recklessly at all. In fact, I've been dipping into the savings I accumulated from my past jobs and have been paying for my essentials myself. Despite that, Rick didn't hold back, commenting that suddenly the cost for food and utilities doubled. That's strange. I responded saying, it's natural for the cost to increase when you go from living alone, but he wouldn't hear any of it. He started saying that's just an excuse. Managing the budget is a wife's duty. Dismissing all the effort I'd been putting in, not stopping there, he even demanded to see all the shopping receipts. I've been cutting down on my own food expenses and occasionally receiving shared vegetables or dishes from neighbors, grateful for every bit of it. Thinking about future childbirth, I saved as much as possible for our child, restraining from spending on anything unnecessary. If I prepared meals the way Rick wanted, it would naturally cost more. I once tried to make a meal that wasn't what he asked for, and I still clearly remember how he sulked that day. I did everything I could to make it up to him afterward, but he was sulking for days. Realize, I've been trying my hardest ever since to prevent that from happening again. But being criticized this extensively, I can't stay silent anymore. So taking his words to heart, I decided to tighten our budget even further. I had been avoiding grocery stores that were far away and had inconvenient transport. But now, regardless of the distance, I go to the cheapest stores, buying groceries and being meticulous about our electricity and water usage to save costs. I used to prepare simple treats as things for gifts from neighbors. But to save money, I stopped doing that, trying to reciprocate with sincere words and occasionally helping them out. Thankfully, the neighbors didn't comment on my changed behavior. In fact, they became even more supportive, often reaching out and encouraging me to speak up if I ever needed anything. Encouraged by their words, I became determined to not let Rick complain anymore. I started showing him the receipts as he demanded, and on top of that, kept a household ledger to track our monthly expenses. I would stare at the ledger daily, thinking all night about how to save every penny. After meticulously tracking everything, the next month we saved $200 compared to the previous one. However, after seeing the results, he just scoffed at still wasting money, hun. That's when it hit me. He just wants to complain. No matter how hard I try from now on, I think he'll never stop complaining. Feeling that, I suddenly became calm and plainly told him, I can't do it anymore. But Rick, maybe disliking my attitude, yelled, "Don't complain when you're living comfortably on my dime, you freeloader." Then, for some reason, he pulled out $100 from his wallet and said, "Make do with this as a penalty for this month." His eyes were filled with malice. It was clear as day he was saying this just to upset me. At that moment, any love I had managed to hold on to plummeted to below freezing, and I coldly responded with just impossible. I didn't even think for a second about trying hard like Rick suggested. Hear him that. Rick smirked and arrogantly said, "If you can't manage, then let's get a divorce." Then, from a drawer, he brought out a filled-out divorce paper. When did he prepare that? He probably thought I'd cling to him if he had this ready, seeing how well prepared he was. I lost track of what Rick was really thinking. We were supposed to live a happy life together after getting married, but he tries to control me and does things to jeopardize that. At this point, I felt relief from the bottom of my heart that we didn't have kids. I refused the $100 he offered and said, "All right, I'll do as you wish." 3 days later, after I had prepared everything, I received a call from Rick. As soon as I answered, without waiting for a reply, Rick yelled, "What the hell is going on?" His yelling was so loud it hurt my ears, so I pulled the phone away, waiting for him to calm down. "What are we talking about?" I replied, exasperated. "That's the lights won't turn on and there's no water," he said, his voice now shaky and close to tears. He might have yelled impulsively when he first called, but he seemed to have realized the gravity of the situation as he explained. His voice was weak and tinged with desperation. Rick to pusty to him. I calmly replied, "Isn't that the life you wanted?" Thing from his reaction on the other end of the phone. I could tell Rick was puzzled. I said clearly, "Living on $100 a month means you want to live like it's the Stone Age. That's why I cut off all your utilities." Rick responded, almost childishly whining. "I didn't say that. That's ridiculous." To which I retorted, "The ridiculous one is you. You only gave me $500 for monthly expenses, and from that, I have a jet for both living expenses and food. If you think I'm wasteful, try budgeting it yourself." Rick then asked, "Where's Anne?" I made sure to inform him that I had returned to my parents' home. Hearing this, Rick gasped and angrily exclaimed, "Why would you do that? You can't just go back to your parents without telling me." But I wasn't fazed and retorted, "We're not married anymore, so what I do is none of your business." He seemed at a loss for words. During the silence, I added, "I divorced you because living on $100 was impossible. Are you satisfied now?" Suddenly, he stammered, "You can't live without me, can you? Why did you accept the divorce so easily?" Then, to which I laughed out loud and said, "I'll be perfectly fine. In fact, life will probably be more comfortable without you around." I continued, "I'm going back to work," implying he should leave me alone. Truth be told, I had a great relationship with my boss. Given we're both the same gender, I deeply trusted her, So when I talked about quitting my job before getting married, she tried hard to persuade me not to. When I shared my true feelings about wanting to continue working, she casually mentioned that I could come back anytime. Her reassuring tone and her willingness to welcome me back meant the world to me at that time. After getting married, I remained in touch with her, sharing my woes and receiving a lot of advice. When I finally told her about the divorce, she paused for a bit and then said, "I'll start the reinstatement process immediately. Return when you feel it's the right time." Rick was probably gaping in disbelief upon hearing I was going back to work. But I added the final blow. Maybe he wanted to mentally overpower me and feel superior, but times have changed. Don't ever contact me again. And with that, I hung up. Afterward, I successfully returned to my job, left my parents' house, and started living on my own, even though our divorce was finalized. Rick kept contacting me, hoping for a reconciliation. He wants me to turn around again and speak his mind. He confessed how much he hated that I was working at a better company and earning a higher salary. He seemed to regret trying to prove that he was superior to me, but every message he sent made his true feelings obvious. He probably just missed having a convenient housekeeper. Rick had always been hopeless on his own and had always lived with his parents. He should return to his family now that we're divorced. But he probably didn't want to after tasting the freedom of living away from them. Eventually, his messages turned overly romantic, which started to creep me out, so I blocked him. Look, now, I'm thriving in my single life, working alongside my trusted boss and colleagues. Thank you for watching the video all the way to the end.